series of about 8 wonderful guests who I can't wait to introduce in just a sec. And we're streaming live from the Humane Canada Summit for Animals. It is one of, or if not the largest and boldest animal welfare conference in Canada. So I am super excited. And if you guys are joining Critters and Cultures for the first time, I just want to give you a little bit of background about Critters and Cultures. It's a podcast that explores the intersection of cultural diversity and the human animal bond. So we do things like honor cultures, highlight cultures, celebrate diversity and uniqueness. We reduce bias, and we really bring that all into the spectrum of our animal world, right? So thank you so much if you're joining. Make sure that you subscribe on YouTube. And it is really great to be here with the audience and with my guest today, which I have a pleasure of introducing. So Nabila, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm super excited. I think we got our jitters out. We're ready to do this,
Yeah,
right?
thanks for having me.
Of course. So we don't have a lot of time today. So I have you for about 15 minutes for this series. But I want to just introduce you. Is that okay?
Yeah. Please.
Okay. So Nabila Badr, or Nabila Badr, right, is the manager of Humane Education at Calgary Humane Society. She brings an incredible passion for education, for animal care, for environmentalism, and inclusivity. After being diagnosed with ADHD herself in her 30s, early 30s, she's been on a mission to create a more humane world, which I absolutely love, not just for animals, but for children, for youth, and for adults alike, right? So we're so excited to have you share your insights today, just about what you do, your heritage, how it all ties together in the human animal bonds world.
Thank you again for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Okay,
Awesome.
all right, great. So, Nabila, tell me a little bit about you. Tell us about who you are and what you do.
Okay, I am born and raised in Edmonton, Alberta, to first generation Canadians, or I guess landed immigrants. I am the first generation. So both my parents came from Egypt, and so in the home we spoke Arabic growing up, but I still kind of think of English as my first language because I'm much more fluent in English, and I spoke English everywhere else as well as at home. Um, so growing up, we did have some pets in our lives, but we had a very different culture. Now that I'm teaching children about how to take care of their pets at home, I'm like, oh, there's some things we could have done better when I was younger. But I think it's important that we're just whenever you learn more, do better, right? Yeah. And so now I have been working at the Calgary Humane Society for just over 3 years now. I'm so honored to be there. I became a manager for humane education about a year and a half ish ago.
Okay.
And it's been a journey. It's one of my favorite things about working there is that I'm always learning something. And sometimes it's like, oh, I was expecting to learn this in this professional development day, or random things happen. You're like, oh, well, I guess I'm learning new things. So I think that's really awesome about working there, and being able to work with kids and animals is always a learning experience.
Yeah, I have a soft spot in my heart for kids and animals, right? Obviously, as a veterinarian, I am like, soft spot for animals. But then I always feel like kids have this light bulb in their eye whenever they get connected to animals. Tell me what you do with the kids.
So I totally agree. Kids have this energy and this vibration, or whatever you want to call it. That there is a commodity with animals and most children, I have to say. And I'm so sorry. Can you repeat your question?
Oh no, I was just saying, what do you do with the kids? So like, how do you connect that? Most of us don't. Humane Society and the kids, maybe they don't go hand in hand. What happens there?
It's really interesting to me how many people are like, oh, I didn't know you did that about so many of our programs. We do things like birthday parties on the weekend, so kids can come have their birthday party. It's very structured. They get to meet an animal guest, they get to do crafts, they get a tour of the shelter, and they get a presentation about Calgary Humane Society. And then we have camps, after school clubs, PD days. I like to tell parents, if your kids aren't in school, we probably have a program running. Nice. What else do we do? I'm like, we do so much. We do presentations, we do field trips. Summer camps, we have 3 camps running simultaneously per week. And they're so exciting. We have tons of different themes, and we try to have different focuses because not every kid, most kids are going to have, maybe a favorite animal or a specific passion. But one of my favorite things to do is interact kids with animals that they're not as into. Snakes, especially, we have a lot of kids who are terrified of snakes.
Yeah, it's a thing.
You have a beautiful picture on your website with you with a yellow snake. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I was terrified, by the way. I was totally terrified.
That's so crazy. too because I'm like, but you know their body language. Like, what
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
think?
yeah.
But I love teaching kids about the animal's body language and how this animal is experiencing the
Okay.
world. And one of my favorite things to mention to children is like the Jacobson's organ. And
Yeah.
it's like something that we don't typically know about. We're not very familiar with. Or personally, I wasn't very familiar with it, and I have since learned that. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe now my understanding is that cats and snakes have a Jacobson's organ, so they're taking in sensory input from the rest of the world, bringing it into that organ where their brain can process it. But we don't have that. How are we processing
Mm.
this input? And so I love
Mhm.
asking kids questions and being like, "What do you think of this?" And what do you think that feels like? Like
Right,
something I like to
right,
talk about too is dogs are learning about the world through their nose.
right.
How cool would it be if we could smell what they smell for even
Yeah,
10
yeah.
seconds?
What are the ages of the kids?
So our programs all start at 6 years old.
Okay,
Sometimes we go and do presentations for pre-kindergarten kids,
okay.
but then we just kind of adjust for the age.
Yeah,
And then we go all the way up to seniors.
I love that.
Our focus is youth in humane education.
Okay,
But we also, one of my coworkers has a really strong passion for working with seniors.
okay.
We all know that, seniors need just as much love as the rest of us and cuddles with our pets
Yeah,
or their pets. And unfortunately, a lot of seniors are in spaces where they can no longer have pets,
right,
or,
right.
if their pet has passed on and they're cognizant of getting a new pet when they're at a certain stage in life,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we're really fortunate to be able to do like tours and things with seniors.
I love that. I'm thinking of like the community aspect of it, and it's almost
Mhm.
like something that every humane society should follow this lady and learn all
Yeah.
about this program that's happening at your humane society. What does that do for the community? Does it bring in the kids from the community? Does it blend the community? How have you seen that impacting the neighborhood?
That's a really cool question, and honestly, I personally haven't paid as much attention to it. We have a newer role at the shelter that is our community services uh, coordinator, and that might not be the exact title, but
Yeah.
her role is working. We have so many different community service
Okay.
programs, so that is actually a little bit separate from the work that I am doing, even though they are very much interconnected.
Okay. Okay.
And so I would like to say that it fosters love in the community. We have seen it where a senior will come through for a tour and an animal guest interaction,
Yeah.
and then they'll tell their family, and their family will eventually sign up their youth for our programs, kind of
Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
So I do think, even if I'm not very cognizant of it personally, I think everything we do has ripple effects,
Yeah,
right?
I
And I'm like,
100% agree.
yeah.
Yeah, and it
So
has to be bringing so much value to the community, right?
yeah,
Even for the elderly, like you
I
said,
hope so.
there is age discrimination that happens when
Hmm.
it comes to people that are seniors who want to adopt a puppy, for
Yeah,
example, right?
yeah,
But bringing them in and having those programs established, maybe they really want to adopt the dog, but they want with a puppy, right?
yeah.
And like all the health benefits that come with that, right?
Right? Something really cool that Calgary Humane Society does. We have an open adoption system.
Yeah.
So if somebody comes in wanting a dog and they're a senior, we're not going to just be like, no, you can't do it. You're old,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
It is going to be a conversation of, okay, well, what does your home life look like? Are you capable and comfortable to do the walks that they need? Or, maybe they come in looking at a very hyperactive dog that's going to pull so much that,
Right.
our big, strong staff members struggle with. We're probably not going to feel comfortable adopting that dog out to a senior. So
Right.
we'll have the
Right.
conversation of like, hey, I know you came in for so and so, but maybe you'd be more likely to be matched with this
Yeah,
dog.
and
Let us
really
introduce you.
explaining that, right? And, like, not
Yeah.
hiding the fact that this could be risky. I actually, had a client who, was carrying her big dog. She was a senior
Oh
client, and
boy.
it was wet outside, and she had these 2
Mm.
big dogs that she couldn't control. She ended up breaking
Oh
her wrist outside in
no.
the parking lot. It was really sad. But it's
Mm.
just giving that, like, not saying, "Oh, no, you can't," but, like, "Here is why we think this,"
Yeah.
right? And maybe this would be better, but then, sometimes
Yeah.
seniors have things set up that we don't really know and they don't
Yeah.
share with us
And that's
too.
why it's so important, I think, to have those conversations because I
Yeah,
don't know what I don't know,
yeah,
and I don't know what your home life looks
yeah,
like, right? Like
exactly. You have
your
support, help, all of those things.
exactly.
Tell me, so you were diagnosed with ADHD, you said in your
Yeah.
30s.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you mentioned during our like pre-talk was that people kind of throw things like OCD and ADHD kind
Mhm.
of like around loosely, right?
Yeah.
So I know that you deal with kids and I want to kind of dive into that a little bit. So tell me, what do you see with the terms OCD and ADHD? And then we'll get into a little bit of neurodiversity too, because I think that that's another aspect that I want to like learn so much from you about. So
Mhm.
much of diversity is actually talked about, and neurodiversity is gaining momentum. And
Yes,
so
thankfully.
it's gaining momentum,
Yeah.
right? And important in your line of work with children. But
Mhm.
talk to me about these terms that we're using flippantly. Why do you feel that way?
I I really I hate the flippant use of it.
Hate is such a strong
And
word,
honestly,
Jen.
that's why I paused because I usually try not to use the word hate, but
Yeah.
I can say with confidence that I hate when people use these terms uh, inappropriately
Yeah.
or kind of more casually. Because yes, everyone gets distracted, but to be like, oh, I forgot my keys. I'm so ADHD.
Right, right.
I feel like it really minimizes the fact that yes, forgetting your keys could be a symptom of ADHD. Um, but it's not like it's just that one thing. For
Mhm.
me, getting ready, you got an email from me this morning being like, "Where are we supposed to meet?" Oh my gosh. It's you forget your keys, which then leads you to slam your this is just an example, but
Yeah.
like you forget your keys, you slam your finger in the door because you're stressed and you're rushed and you're trying to rush and so you're not going to be late and you don't want to waste anyone's time and so it's becomes this thing and now you're dressed but you're sweating and so your makeup is running and now your hair is frizzy and it's
Right.
not just that I forgot my
Right.
keys. It is
Wow.
every
Thing
single
that
thing that
came.
I touch and everything
Yeah.
that I interact with
Mm,
is vastly, like
mm,
strongly affected by this
mm, mm.
to the point where sometimes I am, largely very functional,
Mm,
but I can break down when it's just I just forgot my keys. But it's
right.
not just my keys. It's
Mm,
a ripple effect again of like so many things are interconnected with it that for someone to be like, oh, I'm so ADHD, it negates the struggles that my day-to-day life always encompasses.
yeah.
And not having dealt with my ADHD when I was younger
For so
affected
long.
my education. It affected my relationships. It affected relationships with family members that I'll never get back. I'll never be able to fix things just because I know better now.
Mhm.
Whoop,
Yeah.
um, ooh, that was a heavy one actually. In
Yeah.
my family, I personally am diagnosed. Um, I believe many more of my family are probably also on the ADHD spectrum. And thankfully now some of my siblings are going and seeking therapy and seeking diagnoses and trying to figure out also what's going on with themselves.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, how cool would it have been if 20 years ago we had this conversation
Mm,
and as a late teenager my siblings and I could have worked through some of the stuff that's
mm.
affecting us so strongly as adults that then affects their children and the children I work with. And again, ripple effects.
Right.
Everything we touch is affected by it. And
Yeah.
so it's so important to me that um, we're conscious of the words we use. I have a friend who does have OCD. Um, and it completely ruined her life some days.
Mm,
Like there are days where she cannot function despite having a high position at when we work together.
yeah.
Um, and it's just for someone to be like, "Oh, I have to clean this table, or I have to have my desk a certain
I'm
way. I'm
so
so OCD."
OCD. Wow.
That's not what OCD is.
Right.
OCD is a clinical diagnosis that vastly affects people's lives,
Yeah.
right? So when we use it so flippantly, it then kind of creates a trickle effect again, or ripple effect,
Yeah.
where it's the children that we are interacting with are going to use that. I actually at work we had a camp running, and I don't remember how old this kiddo was, but under 10. And we're coming in from outside and putting our jackets away, and she was having a bit of an off day, and I was like, okay, can you hang up your jacket now? And she told me I can't hang up my jacket. I have anxiety,
Mm,
and
right.
I
Right.
had to check myself because of how frustrated I became at that phrase
At that moment.
because
Yeah.
I have struggled with anxiety for many years because of my undiagnosed ADHD.
Right.
And I have had to hang up my coats. I've had to go to school. I've had to go to work with anxiety.
Do all of those things.
Yeah.
I
So I was able
I
to ask this kiddo, I was just like, okay, how can you hang up your jacket with anxiety? And
mm,
she literally made eye contact and was like,
oh,
and
and it
just
was
went into
done.
the
That was
classroom.
it. That was it for her.
Yeah. And it's another thing of like, she's heard that before. And I feel like in her life, she has been allowed to use it as a cop out.
Yeah.
And again, anxiety can ruin your life. It can
Yeah.
ruin your whole day.
Yeah. I wanna just make space because you did get emotional just a little bit here. So I wanna make space. I wanna say that you're educating us on the Critters and Cultures podcast. And so I definitely appreciate you being willing to sit in front of the cameras and do all of this, right? And you're brilliant, right? So I definitely appreciate that. But I want to make space for the moment that you got emotional, but also tie it back to what you said in the very beginning when you were talking about your family. When you know better, then you do better, right? So you said, if we did this 20 years ago, but guess what? You're doing it now.
Yes.
Y'all are doing it now.
I like to think that we're creating a better future for my nieces and nephews.
Exactly.
We're breaking the generational curses that my mom didn't know about generational curses. She needed to raise 5 children in a foreign country.
Wow.
She had a focus. And so the way she reacted to my situation or my ADHD, or the way she reacted to me as a child who had ADHD, she didn't know I had ADHD. She just knew I was a hyperactive child. And she was like, what do I do with this kid?
What do I do?
And my mom actually owned her own daycare. Okay. Both my parents did when we were younger. And so she loved child and youth care. She loved taking care of children. But with her own children, she came across these roadblocks that caused, irreparable damage to our relationship, which, I mean, it would be repairable. Unfortunately, my mom has passed away. Yeah, but it's one of those things of like, if I had learned some of the things that I know today, if I had been properly diagnosed, I could have gone back to my mom and been like, hey, I understand why you did this when we were younger, or hey, I'm sorry I was such a difficult child, or whatever, right?
I completely understand.
So if I could just put a plug there.
I believe in a spiritual world. She's feeling it. Yes. I don't know. I don't know about religion or spirituality for you, but I believe in the energies as well. Right? So
I just want to put a quick plug there. Please, y'all, call your moms. No. They're trying their best. They are literally just people who are trying to raise their children.
Goodness.
So, I was so mean to my mom.
Call my son and tell him that, because he thinks I'm like, oh, he can't have his podcast. He can't have his PlayStation. The world is over. So neurodiversity, just tying back into that word. So OCD, ADHD, those are aspects of neurodiversity, right? Mm-hmm. How
they are, I would call them more types of neurodiversity.
Types of neurodiversity.
And I'm not an expert on the topic at all. But I actually was just reading in my presentation that I'm doing later today, I do talk about this. But neurodiversity and neurodivergent are terms that were coined by Judy Singer in the late 90s. So as someone who's born in the late 80s, we didn't even have those terms when I was
I thought you were a 90s baby girl. Right.
But it's so she actually coined it, and I was just reading about her again last night in preparation. And she actually says she only coined those terms, or specifically coined those terms in respect to Asperger's. And now in the years since then, they have become way bigger. They are much more encompassing of, like you said, ADHD and OCD and anxiety, but also things like FASD, so fatal alcohol spectrum disorder. I'm losing the word, the skin picking thing. I think it's tricho something. Sorry, I'm
tricho is hair. I can't tell you that as a vet.
So it's when you pluck your hairs. Those that's considered neurodiversity as well. Things like depression or mood disorders. So something like bipolar. So there's just neurodiversity has become this huge umbrella, and there's so much under it. And I have a line in my presentation later today that I really like, and it's that there are 8-some billion people living on this planet right now. There have literally never been this many people trying to live together. So we're all still learning, and we're all going to bring different things to the table.
Yeah, I love that education piece. So before we close, this has been amazing. I've learned so much. You are now my new bestie. I love having new besties. How do you see this all tying into the animal world, like the shelter world? Whether it's with the kids, or whether it's how do you use your knowledge and your expertise as an educator, or what do you think?
To be honest, I mean it all overlaps, it all intersects. Shelter life is a little bit difficult because my personal belief is that animal welfare and human welfare are hand in hand.
Yeah.
I also believe in companion animals, and I think that it can be really hard for me to articulate myself to a human. But if I'm talking to a cat or a dog, it's so much easier for me. Right. But with shelter life, shelter cats and shelter dogs are not always going to be the safest or the best to interact with kids. So we have to be very cautious of, kids and animals both being very unpredictable. What is the safest way to interact? So we're very strict with how we interact them. Kids are allowed, we do typically when we have groups, we do 2 finger pets on the back only. We talk about overstimulating the animal. We talk about all these things. And right now, I think that this works for the way our programs are set up. What I would love to do in the future is, do a program where maybe the animal stays with us, stays with us for the full day, or something where we can create those bonds because we don't. The way that we currently have our programs is it's very structured, which I think we do need. But I think there's always room for improvement,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's something that I would really love to be able to do, and I would love to see this in our schools and our classrooms is having an animal that kids can be around, that kids can, pet. If they're overstimulated and they're having a conversation with their teacher, they're not going to articulate themselves as well as if they as they would if they maybe had something of comfort, where maybe there's a dog pressing against their side, or if it's circle time and they're jittery, maybe the dog sits on them, or you can just put the paw on them or their head. Like there are just so many beautiful ways that we can interact with animals, and so it's actually I love that you asked this question because it's opening up so many ideas in my mind of like, oh, well, maybe we could do this or maybe
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And again,
Yeah.
like if anybody that's watching, because this is live stream, but people will go back and watch this later as well. I think it's an opportunity for conversation,
Yes.
right? For you to
Yes.
have with your leaders at the Humane
Mhm.
Society. If you guys don't have an education program, consider putting that into the Humane Society's
Yeah.
programs. And I love that you kind of brought up OCD, ADHD, neurodivergent, neurodiversity, and all of these terms. And I also love that, you know, when you're speaking of these things to create a more inclusive space, right? And so that is incredibly important coming from a woman of color, from one other woman of color to another woman of color. I absolutely love it. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. I did want to just give you an opportunity because you said Arab was your first language, and I was trying to pronounce your name in Arabic. And so I'm going to give you an opportunity to just pronounce your name for me because I tried, but I want to hear it again.
Okay, I'm gonna give you like the segue that I told you before. So because I'm born and raised Canadian, or I'm born and raised in Canada, we spoke in Arabic in the home, so that was technically my first language. But I consider English to be my first language, and so because of that, I have some, and even not because of that, I just in general have some. I had speech impediments as a child that still come out sometimes, and so I don't actually think I pronounce it the most proper, but this is how I pronounce it. So my name is Nabila Badr.
Nabila Badr. I love it. Nabila, thank you so much for being with us on the Critters and Cultures podcast. I really, really appreciate
Thank you for having
all of
me.
the time that you've given and energy that you've given. And I am 100% sure that there are people that are going to gain from this. And that's the
I'm
point of
happy
the
to share
podcast,
that.
right?
Yeah.
The point is to educate, the point is to explore, the point is to say, should I be using that word ADHD so flippantly? Like, what does that do to the people that are actually diagnosed and minimizing their experiences? So I appreciate you so much. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. And thank you guys so much for joining the first live of Critters and Cultures, live streaming from Humane Canada Summit for Animals. We will be back. So we will be back at 4:30. We'll be speaking to a group about gender-based violence and how that relates in the animal welfare world. So catch you guys back at 4:30. Thanks. Bye.